Well, never mind all that stuff, because COVID also taught Sunny Hostin how to get her groceries delivered. Yeah, I know, amazing. But that means it's time for Fact of Life. Interesting change of tune. For more, we go to our chief Sunny Hostin correspondent for a reaction.
Living your life and you're feeling low. You don't know what is true. You don't know what's true. So you quick flip through the channels to watch Sunny on The View. Oh my God, the stuff she says is dumb. Where the hell they get this woman from? She's a host who's always crass and lame, with lots of nonsense to proclaim.
I make fun of The View a lot, but that's only because they keep talking. Those hens are always clucking. They get to say stupid stuff for an hour every day, and then I get to say stupid stuff for an hour every day, except on purpose. Every now and then, one of those dingbats inadvertently says something that reveals modern liberal thought so perfectly it deserves further study. You know, like a weird serpent that washed up on the beach and you want to poke it with a stick. So, Sunny, I bet you haven't been in a supermarket since COVID for about 3 years.
I haven't been in a supermarket since COVID. For about 3 years. That's when I discovered Instacart, and I give them a big tip because they don't always pay their people well, and it's so that's been an issue, I think, for the company. But man, you can get toiletries, you can get fire logs. You know those big Bounty towels you don't want to carry.
Those from Costco.
Somebody else goes.
Fire logs? She had to tell the audience that she tips big because even she knows she sounds insufferable. Hey, I'm an but at least I tip. Hostin's obsession with race gets thrown back in her face. Today's video comes to us from Sunny Hostin. Sounds like a town. We're in Sunny Hostin. She was on PBS's Finding Your Roots, a show dedicated to researching celebrity ancestry.
You guys, we seriously need to talk about Sunny Hostin because this whole situation has totally blown up again. And honestly, people are calling out the hypocrisy so loud right now, it's impossible to ignore. Like, we're talking viral clips, trending hashtags, podcast takedowns, and yes, Joe Rogan and Greg Gutfeld coming in hard with the kind of roast that basically peeled the paint off the walls. And the wild part? It's not even just about her politics anymore. It's about her past. Like, real ancestral history kind of past. So what happened? Okay. Let's start with this. Sunny Hostin, longtime co-host of The View, outspoken advocate for racial justice, known for passionately pushing topics like...
For context, Sunny is a staunch supporter of reparations and has made a fortune spewing nonsense about white privilege and racial justice. Well, turns out she's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners from Europe. Here's how she took the news.
Reparations and white privilege just got hit with a wave of backlash after a very unexpected twist came out. And where did this all explode? Not on a debate stage, not in a viral tweet, but on Finding Your Roots, the PBS show that dives into celebrity ancestry. And this particular episode, let's just say it uncovered something nobody saw coming. Because yeah, turns out Sunny's family line traces back to slave owners from Europe, actual colonizers. And for someone who has built a major chunk of her public persona around systemic oppression and generational injustice, this news kind of hit like a wrecking ball. And of course, the internet ran with it. The clips started circulating, people started asking questions, and that's when Joe Rogan and Greg Gutfeld stepped in. And let's just say they didn't exactly hold back. But here's the thing. This whole controversy isn't just about ancestry, it goes way deeper. It's about how that discovery clashes with years of public commentary, how she's treated critics, and why people are now saying Sunny Hostin's entire take just backfired in the biggest way possible. And that, you guys, is just the beginning. So let's talk about the roast, because this wasn't just some casual jab.
Wow. I'm a little bit in shock. I just always thought of myself as Puerto Rican, half Puerto Rican. I didn't think I was, my family was originally from Spain and slaveholders.
Yeah. It was a full-on televised takedown. Joe Rogan and Greg Gutfeld literally tore into Sunny Hostin's entire public persona, like they were peeling back layers of a very smug onion. And the best part? They didn't even need to yell. They just held up a mirror. And Sunny's reactions basically did the rest. First up was Joe Rogan. He called her out in classic Rogan fashion. Calm, measured, but absolutely brutal. He pointed out how Sunny constantly talks in moral absolutes, like she's delivering commandments from some ideological mountaintop, while ignoring the giant contradictions staring her right in the face. Like, how can you be one of the loudest voices accusing average Americans of benefiting from historical injustice when your own family history literally includes owning slaves? He didn't scream. He didn't get angry. He just laid it out. And Sunny's silence said everything. Then Greg Gutfeld stepped in, and let's just say he brought the sarcasm cannon. He joked that Sunny probably virtue signals in the bathroom and described her entire career as a highlight reel of accidental comedy.
So how are you feeling, my friend?
I think it's actually pretty interesting that my husband and I have shared roots.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate that. And I think it's great for our children to know this information. I guess it's a fact of life.
One of his biggest burns, he said, watching her give political takes is like watching someone try to defuse a bomb with a spoon. Chaotic, loud, and it never ends well. And they weren't just roasting for laughs, they were pointing out something bigger. This idea that Sunny uses her platform to push outrage, claim victimhood, and silence any pushback by labeling it as hate. Like, if you question her, you're suddenly labeled a bigot. If you disagree, you're part of the problem. And that's exactly why so many people resonated with what Gutfeld and Rogan were saying. It wasn't about being mean, it was about finally saying out loud what a lot of people had been thinking. But if you thought the ancestry bombshell and the roast were the end of it, oh no, it gets way messier. Because what people started digging up next made this controversy explode even more. So if you thought the whole ancestry twist was the only skeleton coming out of Sunny Hostin's closet, buckle up, because now people are digging into her personal life. And let's just say the internet has questions. Like, a lot of questions. And the name popping up everywhere? Emmanuel Hostin, Sunny's husband. Now, Sunny has always painted a picture of her family life as elegant, intellectual, and pretty much controversy-free. She talks about her marriage often on The View, usually with that air of, "We're not like the rest of you." But earlier this year, reports surfaced linking her husband to a major lawsuit. We're talking racketeering claims.
Oh, I'm gonna milk this till the end of time. You're right. Anytime she says something stupid, I'm gonna go, slave owner! Kat, I just watched that. That's the second time I've watched that. She was tipped off beforehand, right? Because they had to tell her before, so she had time to regroup. They wouldn't just surprise. Do you think? No?
I don't know. I feel like she could have maybe done better. Okay.
Shady insurance activity and a medical billing scandal that had people side-eyeing real hard. Now, to be fair, the legal case hasn't fully played out, but the timing couldn't have been worse. Because imagine this, while Sunny is online and on television framing herself as a moral compass for America, her own household is being mentioned in the kind of lawsuits that could get someone barred from practicing medicine, and fans didn't miss it. Overnight, tweets started pouring in asking if she'd comment on it. Spoiler, she hasn't. And now, critics are using this to double down on their claims of hypocrisy. Like, how do you champion integrity, transparency, and justice when your own situation is looking this messy behind the scenes? And remember, that's all happening at the same time the Ancestry clip was going viral and the Rogan Gutfeld roast was gaining millions of views. It was basically a perfect storm of bad press. But the craziest part? Sunny still went on The View the next morning like nothing had happened. Same tone, same lectures, same smugness. And that's when people really started turning. Because if there's one thing the internet hates, it's when someone acts untouchable while the receipts are literally printing themselves. And just when you think it couldn't get more awkward, her political hot takes start aging very badly. So here's where things really start unraveling. Because even before the Ancestry reveal and the family drama, Sunny Hostin was already making headlines for her hot takes. And not in a good way. In the last couple of years, she's become kind of infamous for turning every debate on The View into what critics call a woke monologue. And look, there's nothing wrong with being opinionated, but it's the contradictions that keep getting louder. Take her stance on immigration.
I think that women, white women in particular, want to protect the patriarchy here because it's to their benefit. Yeah. They want to make sure that their husbands do well. They want to make sure that their sons do well. They want to make sure that their children do well. And they want to make sure that they do well. Most of the women in some of these studies are married white women, and they do fall in line with what their husbands are doing.
People have to wonder, where does Sunny Hostin get her opinions?
Yeah.
Like you said, it's obviously from her husband.
Sunny once argued that using the word illegal to describe undocumented migrants was inhumane. Okay, that's her opinion. But then she turned around and dismissed rural Americans as uninformed and suggested that some of them shouldn't even be voting if they didn't understand basic politics. So wait, words matter when it comes to border control, but not when talking about Middle America? Then there's the Israel-Palestine conflict. Sunny took a hardline stance and criticized Israel on air, calling their government's policies racist. And while she's entitled to that viewpoint, what really blew up was how she handled the backlash. Rather than engage in conversation, she basically doubled down and labeled critics as part of the problem. People online weren't just mad, they were pointing out how she weaponizes identity and then ducks accountability when her takes get challenged. And don't even get people started on the culture commentary. Sunny recently made waves when she shaded younger pop stars like Sabrina Carpenter and Olivia Rodrigo, calling their lyrics shallow and overexposed. Which, fine, it's her opinion, but fans were quick to point out that Sunny herself has promoted ultra-mainstream, often corporate-backed narratives for years. Like, how are you going to knock a 24-year-old for going viral when you're literally sitting on ABC's biggest daytime platform? The thing is, every time Sunny tries to lead the conversation, people are now circling back to that ancestry reveal, her husband's legal issues, and the very visible privilege she operates from. And it's starting to feel like every time she speaks up, she digs the hole a little deeper. But it's what happened next.
But look, what did it take for us to get to the point of an apology? We had to threaten a lawsuit, Jesse. And by the way, we're still entertaining it. We're talking to some of the best lawyers out there that are experts in this. And as you know, these things can be very complicated. There's a lot of facts and circumstances around it.
During a now viral live TV moment that really sent the internet into overdrive. So the moment that really made everything boil over? Yeah, it happened live on The View. And while the episode aired like normal, people who were watching closely, and trust me, the internet was watching closely, caught a moment that felt way too real to ignore. Sunny Hostin was in the middle of one of her usual segments, passionately explaining why she believed a certain policy was rooted in, quote, systemic bigotry, when things got tense. Another panelist, not naming names, but let's just say it wasn't her usual echo chamber, pushed back. Nothing aggressive, just a calm disagreement. And Sunny, she snapped. Her voice got sharp. She interrupted mid-sentence, and then there was this look. Like she realized mid-rant that she had just made it way too personal. The camera panned out, the conversation shifted, but you could feel the tension through the screen. And social media, instantly on it. People started posting clips, doing freeze frames, even reading her lips. The phrase Sunny meltdown was trending on Twitter within hours. But here's the kicker. That segment got clipped, re-uploaded, and dissected by everyone from podcast hosts to TikTok creators. And while the official View channel tried to keep it clean, alternate angles and hot mic recordings told a different story. Word on the street is Sunny wasn't too thrilled during the next commercial break either. Sources said she had a bit of a moment backstage. Nothing confirmed, but let's just say the vibes were not immaculate, and this wasn't the first time something like this had happened.
But we're not going to let this go, because you should not be able to smear 5,000 high school and college kids and then just be able to walk away with it.
Remember that time she got into it with Meghan McCain? Or when she completely shut down a guest mid-sentence and then doubled down as if she were moderating a courtroom? It's a pattern, and that's what people are finally starting to call out. It's not just one slip-up or bad take. It's the growing disconnect between how Sunny sees herself and how she actually behaves on national television. And the fact that this meltdown happened right after all the ancestry and legal stuff surfaced, yeah, it didn't help. But what happened after the show aired was even more telling. So after that on-air moment, things went from bad to worse, because the internet didn't just move on, it mobilized. Within hours, Sunny Hostin was trending again. But this time, It wasn't the usual fan praise or media echo chamber. It was viewers, fans, and even longtime supporters saying, yeah, this is starting to feel like too much. On Reddit, people were posting full breakdowns of her past takes, like side-by-side comparisons of what she said in the past versus what just happened. Some even started calling her the Queen of Contradictions. On TikTok, creators were stitching the viral clips from The View with snippets from Finding Your Roots, pointing out how ironic it is that someone so vocal about oppression ended up being descended from colonizers. And Twitter? Oh, Twitter was ruthless. Memes, side-eyes, Sunny logic jokes. It was all there. And the backlash wasn't just coming from conservatives or the usual critics. There were people who used to love Sunny, folks who respected her activism and supported her strong takes, now saying, okay, but where's the accountability?
It is the show that people love to hate.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
They get so much hate watching and hate watching viral clips of them saying ridiculous things. I mean, it is a rabies infested hen house.
Because when you're constantly calling other people out, demanding apologies, and positioning yourself as the moral compass, you kind of have to live up to that same standard. And Sunny isn't really doing that right now. One tweet that went super viral literally said, Sunny Hostin wants to hold America to a standard she won't even hold herself to. And you know what? That pretty much sums it up. This wasn't just a moment, it was a shift. People stopped clapping, and they started questioning. And what's even more wild is how Sunny handled all of it. No acknowledgement, no clarification, no real response. She went back on air the next day like nothing happened. Same tone, same smug delivery, like the internet wasn't dragging her in real time. And that silence, it spoke louder than anything she said lately. But while Sunny stayed quiet, Joe Rogan and Greg Gutfeld weren't done. Not even close. So while Sunny was trying to act unbothered, Joe Rogan and Greg Gutfeld were doing the exact opposite. They were just getting warmed up, because after their initial takedown went viral, instead of letting it fade, they doubled down. And what they said next had people either laughing out loud or straight up shaking their heads. Joe Rogan kept his usual chill tone, but he was absolutely clear. He said Sunny doesn't want equality. She wants exemption. From criticism, from pushback, from consequences. He literally compared trying to debate her to teaching a cat to juggle. Pointless, chaotic, and bound to leave you scratched. And yeah, that clip, it went wild. People reposted it with captions like Rogan didn't lie and Sunny got humbled without a single insult. And then there's Gutfeld, who, let's be real, turned this into his own comedy special. He called Sunny the human version of a fire alarm that only goes off when someone uses logic. He even pitched a fake memoir title, Gaslight, the Sunny Hostin story. Brutal. But again, the point wasn't just to make fun of her, it was to call out what they see as a deeper issue. The way some media personalities build entire careers off outrage and contradiction, and then act shocked when people call it out. And look, it wasn't all jokes.
The reason they felt they needed to do that, Jesse, is because if they told their audience the truth, that when gas is the most expensive it's been, flights are super expensive, that 5,000 kids decided to spend a weekend in summer traveling across the country to go hear from conservative speakers.
They also talked about how Sunny uses identity as a shield, how she frames disagreement as oppression, how she goes after others for platforming misinformation while often delivering takes that are either wildly misinformed or conveniently selective. Rogan even said it's less about ideology and more about control. And honestly, that hit a nerve with a lot of people, because in a world where everyone's fighting for attention, being called out by two of the most watched media figures, that's not just a bad day, it's a public unraveling. And if you think it ends there, think again. There's still one more twist people aren't ready for. So here's where everything starts to come full circle. And honestly, it's kind of wild to look back and realize how perfectly all the pieces line up. Sunny Hostin built her brand around being a voice for the marginalized. She spoke with authority, with confidence, with that signature mix of conviction and condescension that made her either adored or disliked. There was no in between. But now, people are saying the math isn't mathing. Think about it. She pushed for reparations, criticized privilege, and constantly pointed out systemic injustice. But then, Finding Your Roots drops a truth bomb. Her own family tree includes European slaveholders. Her husband's wrapped up in a high-profile lawsuit that goes directly against the values she preaches. Her commentary on The View keeps slipping into performative rants that sound less like informed opinions and more like rehearsed outrage. And now, fans are starting to ask the one question she never seems to answer. Who is Sunny Hostin, really? Because the public image, the activist, the moral anchor, the intellectual voice, just doesn't line up with the facts. What started as minor contradictions have now turned into a full-blown identity crisis. And instead of addressing it, Sunny's doubled down, as if saying things louder somehow makes them true.
Maybe the audience of The View would think twice about all of their ideas. That's why they felt so compelled to try to smear our wonderful summit this last week.
Yeah, they have nothing else to talk about. Maybe you should get the lawyer that worked on that Covington Catholic school case. What was that, a $200 million settlement?
Rogan called it weaponized narcissism dressed as commentary. Gutfeld said it's like watching a fortune cookie rewrite itself every time someone disagrees. And the internet, they're calling her the privileged prophet. It's not just about one episode or one scandal, it's about the pattern. And that pattern is now impossible to ignore. Sunny Hostin has become a symbol of media hypocrisy, unchecked ego, and what happens when the gap between persona and reality gets too wide to cover up. And if she doesn't course correct soon, the unraveling we're watching now might just be the beginning of something even bigger. So, at the end of the day, this wasn't just a headline or a moment of internet backlash. This was a full-blown reality check for Sunny Hostin and, honestly, for anyone watching. Because when the public starts peeling back the layers, what's underneath has to hold up. And in Sunny's case, what people found didn't just surprise them, it completely flipped the narrative. Her ancestry reveal on Finding Your Roots shattered the image of an unshakable social justice voice. The lawsuit involving her husband chipped away at the credibility she used to speak on ethics. The viral moments on The View, the clips of her shutting people down, the constant contradictions, it all started stacking up. And then Rogan and Gutfeld stepped in, not with rumors or smear tactics, but with something far more damaging. Her own words, played back, with the context no one had dared to bring up before. And maybe that's the real takeaway here. In an age where personalities are built on platforms and amplified by outrage, the truth still matters. Not the curated version, but the whole story. And Sunny, she's learning the hard way that when your platform is built on being the loudest in the room, you'd better hope your record can survive the echo. So what happens next? Will Sunny finally address the backlash? Will she acknowledge the growing cracks in her story? Or keep pretending nothing happened? That's the question everyone's asking now. Because for someone who's spent years holding others to the fire, it's starting to look like she's standing in it herself.